Today, I'm going to take you through a case study of one of my recent brand identity design projects. Let's go! Hello friends, Matt Brunton here. I'm a designer in the north of England, and if you are a designer or perhaps in marketing, business, or just a fan of aesthetics, you might enjoy this video. If you are none of those things, maybe not. But I'm going to take you through a case study of a recent identity design project that I worked on. So identity design is about creating a design language for a brand. So once something about what you want the brand to be has been established, what the brand's personality is, what its goals is, working out some sort of strategy and positioning, then it's about having the visuals that go with those words and those ideas. So a lot of people think about logos as branding, but those in the know are aware that it's a whole system, it's a whole world of imagery that creates a cohesive design language. And I love designing these kind of systems. So this project is for a client named Dust Palace. And what Dust Palace does is sell digital products. They're audio samples for music. And they particularly work with drum samples is what they're known for, and having a particular aesthetic, a particular style within that. And they definitely wanted to position themselves as a premium brand. Now, the difficulty is with samples, you can see some examples here of artwork that you'll find in sample library packs, and it's a commodity. It's like a race to the bottom with pricing a lot of the time in the industry, because it's so easy for people to just upload something online and put it up for sale. There's a lot of competition. So Dust Palace wanted to separate themselves by being deliberately higher quality and differentiate themselves by doing something unusual and building a unique and trusted brand, people who knew their particular sound. So this name, Dust Palace, was invented by the client. And so I started off, we had some idea about the brand and the direction, the personality and where we wanted to go. It wanted it to feel not like a digital product business, but more like an indie record label. So it had that kudos, it had that credibility within the industry, and it was seen as something being cool, being legit. So we're talking about what that aesthetic would be like and what it would feel like. But because I had this name, I just started off sketching. And I sketched lots of palaces. I did a bunch from memory, a few different styles, the Greco-Roman style, more like Arabian styles. And I just kind of went with it. And then I looked at some picture references and copied some of those and just did as many sketches as possible. And this is a key part, to just get ideas out and just see where your hand takes you and just kind of go with it. And then from this and thinking through, what we had in place in terms of what the brand was going to be and the elements that were there, we discussed together some of the key elements and the key aspects that were going to be included visually. So one of those was medium format film photography. And the client actually had a photographer in place, a photographer from London named Chris Mars. And we managed to get some beautiful photography of this style. This medium format has a very specific look, and with it being film, it's grainy, and we went for black and white, and the whole monochrome thing helped it sit with that personality that I talked about, where it needed to be. So back to this icon, we wanted something that worked with that, and I'm a big fan of designing icons that have that simplicity. They need to be functional as a logo. So when it came to digitizing, there was just a process of refining this, and we ended up with something which had this architectural quality to it, with deliberate proportions. See the thick strokes, and that suggests a sense of strength, prominence, permanence, and it gave a bit of weight to it. And the form's recognizable, but it's not naturalistic. Naturalistic logos don't often work too well in applications. And when it's enclosed in this box, it becomes more of an abstract mark. And we use the symbol by itself because it's a very understated means of identification. It's kind of like a stamp to just have that icon, even without words. And that can be used quite effectively, as hopefully you'll see in some of the applications. So The colour palette as well is monochrome, you'll have noticed so far. Black and white photography, and these graphics are being presented in black and white. Now we use this sort of off black and off white rather than a strictly 100% digital black, digital white, because that would have been too clean and too high contrast. So this worked a bit better with a little bit of dirt, which marries up with the noise in the photos, which marries up with the dirt and grain they have in their audio, because they have a lot of affected sounds and distorted sounds, processed sounds. That's part of their aesthetic. So this was all to be consistent and to evoke the same feeling, so it was consistent throughout the experience. And so these off black and white also work well because it's slightly lower contrast, so on screen it's not so harsh on the old retinas. With the word mark, you can see here it says Dust Palace. This is a slightly modified version of a typeface called Stat from Public Type, and the modification is with the LA. Capital L, capital A is a famously difficult kerning pair. So you can see I've just sliced the L using the angle from the A just to bring those a little bit closer together. And setting this in all caps in a heavy way, it's strong, it's confident. And we wanted something comparable to like a fashion house. Think of Chanel or Burberry. This is kind of the look, but we wanted something that wasn't just utilitarian like that, but it just had a little bit more personality. You can see this sort of wavy S, it's almost like an 8, and it's designed to be very tightly kerned, this typeface. So we felt that had a little bit more personality to it, but it was in that same space, and we wanted to have that kind of confidence that yes, it was a sample library, yes, it was digital products, but we can come out with a brand that's like a fashion house that people would buy into, that one day the client's ambition was that they would buy merch, they would buy physical products because they would want to be associated with this thing. So we want to really elevate within the category. We also created this combination mark, which uses a stacked word mark, but the idea is that this combination mark is to be used rarely. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. One is I really like the understated nature of just using the icon or just using the word mark. And together, the combination mark can look a little bit too corporate. I don't think this one does, but you can be in danger of that, and we want it to be far from that. But also you've got this double reading of palace, which is generally a no-no. You see a palace and then you read the word palace, so you don't need both. So the combination mark exists, sometimes it'll be necessary, but it's designed to be not used often. But when you begin to see some of the examples, you see how the combination of these things work, how well this icon looks in things like merchandise, which is a key application, and also the word mark can look really good in those avenues. You can also see in some of those applications the complementary typefaces that have been used. So this typeface here is Neue Haas Unica, which is designed by a guy called Toshi Omagari, and that's based on the original Unica, which is supposed to be between Universe and Helvetica, which are two like ubiquitous fonts. So it's slightly narrower forms than Helvetica, basically. It's like a halfway house. And I really like it, and it works really well in this application. The whole look really is very modernist, and you will see that influence in almost all of my work, but it was very appropriate, we felt, to this brand because the values of that carry through to this. You see this in some of these illustration concepts as well that we develop for these different audio ideas: echo, spring reverb, distortion. Some of these graphics may be used in actually later products they're developing, virtual instruments, things like that. But with the artwork for the actual sample packs, we went again for a very ordered, modernist layout. So again, there's a system to it. So you've got the catalog number, then you have the title of the sample pack below it, and you have the icon of Dust Palace, and then some macro photography of some of the audio equipment that is used in the production of these samples. These things are all made in a very analog way. There's a lot of recording, there's a lot of use of vintage equipment. So that whole feel hopefully has come through. You can see in a couple more applications as well There's a lot of grid system, and we just wanted to bring that whole feel to it. So it was something that people really covet. And this brand is having a launch or a relaunch at the moment, and there's been a really good response to it, and great feedback from the client, and really fun to work on this kind of things. I've done a lot of work in the music industry, but I really enjoy brands that want to sit in this sort of space and be very design led. So hopefully that was helpful, just taking through a few of the decisions. There's a lot that I haven't said, but hopefully what I've shared might help you if you're a designer with your process, or if you're not, if you may be hiring as a designer, give you an insight into some of the questions and some of the things you might want to consider and be aware of with what you need as part of your identity design. There's a lot more that can be said about branding, obviously, than what we did in these few minutes, but hopefully that's been helpful for you. Look forward to talking to you soon.